All right, everybody. My name's Steve Solof with InformTheVoteNJ.com, and today we're sitting down and having a chat with Justin Barbera, who is running for governor in the New Jersey Republican primary at the moment. He's got about four other contenders in that primary race, and assuming he were to go through, um, he would go up against the Democrat challenger, but they have six candidates in their race right now. Uh, so that's 11 people in total. And part of what we like to do here at informthevotenj.com is make the information gathering and analysis process a little bit easier for you guys. So, first off, thank you very much, Justin.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be on this call with you, Steve. I really want to commend you for everything you do, making our voters understand who there's options are on the ballot.
Yeah, just to give people who may not have watched any of these videos before understand, my whole journey started about 2, maybe 3 years ago when I got one of those sample ballots in the mail. And it's a long list of names of people that you can vote for. But like many other people, I wasn't particularly paying attention to local politics. And so it was very overwhelming to try to figure out who these people were. And like most other people in the year 2025, started my Google searches and couldn't find anything significant about the candidates. So then I went and voted in that primary blind. And I said, you know what? That's just not right. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep searching. And so I started sending letters in the mail, emails, contacting people on social media, all that kind of stuff. It took a good 6 weeks before I finally got a hold of my mayor, Anthony Finucci, here in Vineland. And he started saying, oh, okay, we have meetings over here. I'm going to reach out to the Democrats. Blah, blah, blah. And so that was a really good starting point to make the connections. But, I've been still going down that rabbit hole for about 2 years. And, you know, not that I can quantify it exactly, but I still only half know what's going on. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this call and get information about your campaign out to the voters directly so that they don't have to spend 2 years trying to figure it out for themselves. So
Yeah,
with all, oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's been a struggle for the voters in New Jersey because unfortunately we have a lot of biased media. I appreciate you sitting down with all the candidates. It shows that you're committed to the constituents and getting them the true details of the people running on that ballot that they're going to be looking at in about 30 days.
Yep, exactly. So then why don't we dive right into it? Uh, you're, by my estimate, a bit of a newcomer to the political campaign atmosphere. So why don't you tell the audience about who you are, what your background is, and your relevant type of experience uh, that would be good for a governor's position?
I'm a New Jersey resident most of my life. I'm a father of three. That brings me to the political field because I want to make sure their future is as bright as possible. And currently, we have a lot of problems in education. We have problems with taxes and insurance providers. We're really being pressured here in New Jersey in every aspect of economy, and it worries me. So I made sure to throw my hat in the ring. I'm very green at this. I'm not a career politician. I'm a contractor by trade. I threw my hat in the race and said enough is enough, and I believe that. I want to make sure that New Jersey has a bright future, and a vote for me is a vote for the people of New Jersey. I do not have any favors owed to anybody. I have not seeked to generate revenues for this campaign. I've managed to do it on a truly grassroots effort. And I'm excited for the next 30 days. Hopefully, we get a good turnout at the polls and people believe in this campaign and that New Jersey needs to change in every way possible. And I'm ready to do that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, not that I'm supposed to be directly endorsing any of the candidates or what they're saying, but I do resonate with that outsider coming in mentality just from my perspective because I don't know, maybe growing up I took a lot of things for granted that government and other forms of authority basically had it handled. And so I didn't really need to pay attention as much. But as most people are aware, the past 10 years have really opened a lot of eyes and ears as to what's going on. And me looking at the local level, I've noticed some things going on that I think probably need change. And I also am not really coming into this with any sort of bias or I don't owe anybody any favors or whatever. Like I said, I just opened that ballot and I was genuinely curious about informing myself. So I think our Venn diagrams overlap in that sort of way. So then, thank you for that introduction to yourself. And let's dive in a little bit more into your campaign. Can you give me some of your top issues or not the issues, but your agenda items, as in what are you really focused on? What are you hoping to accomplish?
I want to turn the state more conservative. We've been far left for too long. Even with the Republicans we've elected, they've seemed to move to the left. I want to make sure New Jersey is a safe place. So the sanctuary state will be removed with my entrance into the position. I will make sure we designate areas for ICE to make crackdowns, and I will back up the president and what he's doing federally. I want to make sure New Jersey state troopers are backing up and turning over anybody that's illegal to the ICE and the township level as well. We want to make sure our neighborhoods are safe, especially where we're heavily populated like Newark and Camden. We want to make sure New Jersey residents are the primary focus of this campaign.
Cool. So then the way I like to frame some of these issues is, as I'm sure you're aware, if you listen to maybe left wing media, they'll try to frame the immigration ICE issues as people have a right to be here, they have due process, and while we might want to get some of the violent criminals out, the way the Trump administration is handling it is inappropriate. But if you listen to right wing media, they'll say, well, we need to really make the streets safe, like you're implying. Is there maybe any sort of clarification that you want to put out there so that moderates like myself who try to at least pay attention to both sides of the aisle uh, do you either want to dive deeper into that or maybe emphasize some points that would help someone like me more clearly understand what you're going to do?
So, in my eyes, if somebody broke the law by coming to America, they need to be deported. I will stand with the Trump administration where if they turn themselves in and save taxpayer dollars from hunting them down, we'll give them a flight back to wherever they're from. I I believe that's a really good idea. It's economical, and and it'll make our nation and our state really shine because we're doing what we say we're going to do. We have borders for a reason. We need to uh, we need to hold people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Even the illegal immigrant's going to be held accountable as well.
Sure, that helps clarify all that. How about what would be agenda item number two that you might want to highlight?
I'd like to go through each town and find the corruption, find the money laundering. Um, let's let's cripple bad politicians and put them, put them behind bars and make sure the state runs efficiently. We support the Doge movement. We need to really, um, we need to go above and beyond to find the corruption because we know it exists here in New Jersey.
Can you maybe give a couple of examples of things that you're aware of here in New Jersey that are corrupt and need cleaning up?
Well, you see a lot of politicians spending money or putting money in nonprofits and then the money disappears. You see a lot of contracts going and they're being padded. The contractors are being told, raise it up some, that's not enough money. And, you know, people end up keeping the money that's, part of that whole good old boy scheme.
Mm.
And it goes much further with spending on our infrastructure. We're not we're not building in an efficient manner with any clear thought. Our you know cities and roads are crumbling, and our energy grid is suffering. We broke up the monopoly, but we never had a plan here in New Jersey to generate energy, so we're importing it. We need to be energy efficient and independent of other states.
Yeah, cool. And then maybe what would agenda item number three be?
Well, I didn't get the education. That's really my closest to my heart. The kids are really falling by the wayside, whether it be what they're learning in school and how unproductive that is for graduation. They need to be given the tools to survive in this state that we live in. Where it's very competitive. We have foreign companies coming in and taking a lot of jobs and providing a lot of services, and they're not made any longer here in the United States. So I'd like to support the kids that live around the farmland, teach them what it is to farm and how to lease land and get some food to the grocery store. And in the cities, I'd like to bring the unions in and teach these kids what it is to be part of a union and hopefully on graduation get some kids joining the union with a year shaved off of the apprenticeship.
Cool. So it sounds like you're trying to take education in a direction that is much more direct, job ready skills as opposed to general stuff about a million different topics. There are specific jobs that need to be done now, as opposed to, I don't know, pontificating about stuff, advanced trigonometry or I don't know, some of the weird stuff that gets taught at the colleges that might not be uh practical for the real world.
I agree. I also want to take out biases towards a political side one way or another in our schools that doesn't belong in our schools. Civics is very important for them to understand how to run for government and how a government works and the power of the people and to get them excited about politics. That's very important, but I don't want to steer the kids in a direction. That's for them to figure out.
Yeah, you want to teach kids how to think, not what to think. Cool. And while we're talking about that, that was going to be a later topic, but one of the things that I've noticed in my process trying to inform the voters is oftentimes, myself included, I don't know how the local governments work. The first year, I got that sample ballot in the mail, and I'm being asked to make a choice between a Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate for county surrogate. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what even is a county surrogate? And that led to a discussion with a couple people, and they seemed to get frustrated with me just trying to clarify, like, well, what is this job and what exactly are you trying to do? And that kind of trickled around to, well, what exactly are the roles of a county clerk? And what is the difference between a US senator and a state senator? So the first idea I have is to do kind of what you were saying, but to literally mandate that public schools and all the other schools teach local civics so that when it is time for the constituents to vote, they actually have a firm grasp of what it is that they're voting for. How do you feel about specific legislation to reintroduce local civics?
I'd love to see 4 years of civics. Let's have the kids get on debate stages. Let's produce the best students in civics as possible. So when they graduate, some of them want to enter the politics. They'll already have all those skills they need to start their campaign. And of course, they're going to be informed voters because, they're studying civics every year. I also want to see the kids mandatory have some type of shop class for 4 years.
Mhm. Yeah, just basic life skills type stuff. Cool. So then let's circle back um, to some known issues. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you bring up election integrity in some of your prior videos?
I did. I did. I wanted to shy away from mail-in ballots. I wanted to put security at our voting stations and on the ballots at all times because our ballots are worth more than our money. And what happened here in Burlington County this past election cycle was embarrassing, insulting to the people. To have a senior citizen or a mother with three kids stand in line for hours on end is dangerous to the public. And you know, for an event that we planned years in the making, it was very poorly executed.
Can you help elaborate or illustrate, describe what that event was? Because uh I'm in Cumberland County, you're in Burlington County. What exactly happened?
They used the that new computer uh, tabulation machine where you feed it, you type your responses on the flat screen, and then it prints something out. Then you take it to the tabulator, and then you feed it into the tabulator. It's just a whole bunch of laborious steps that you know we've instituted that has made our voting more complicated. And if a machine doesn't work, or if they don't order enough machines like they did in Burlington County, then the lines were around the block, even for early voting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible here, but we had a similar type of issue in Vineland, Cumberland County. The machine was probably down for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and they eventually got it working again. But if I'm picking up what you're throwing down, you're basically saying like the paper ballot system was good enough. So why do all these extra steps that could cause extra problems when perhaps just going back to the old fashioned way would be simpler and cheaper?
Like that, you're onto something, Steve. You're really onto something. Sometimes change isn't needed, especially if it's causing additional problems with voter integrity.
Hmm.
You know, it's a lot harder to get rid of paper ballots than it is digital ones. I know that.
Right,
We got the Hillary Clinton emails that disappear along with, many other things. So I
right.
just would like to see our the integrity of elections drastically improve.
Yeah, you're kind of saying that it's a lot easier to hit delete on a computer than it is to shred 30,000 documents or whatever it would be.
Right? Yeah.
Cool. Um,
I want to remind everybody how Australia does it. New Jersey, actually, the United States voter turnout is around 30%, and on primaries, it's around 10%.
mhm.
Australia, all the way around the world, fines their people if they don't go to the ballots. So they get really good turnouts. They got like 70% turnouts.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would do that, but it's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, I've considered similar things. Like you, I don't know if I would go that far, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think Vivek Ramaswamy suggested when he was running that people, if they want to vote, they should pass a basic civics exam so that they're we know that people who are voting, they at least have half of an idea of what's going on. Now, I understand there are some moral or ethical implications behind that, but the general idea is to change the culture in a way that we treat voting and elections and all these things as important as they really are, as opposed to maybe someone like me running around for 20 years and barely paying attention to it. And then all of a sudden, all the problems are out of control. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. What's going on? Whereas if we were all encouraging each other to participate more, it could go smoother.
Yeah, I'd like to see a more free flow of information and understanding to the people, whether it be a statewide app where we could follow politics and corruption and also celebrate people that are doing things civically in our community. That would be a great way to bring the unity of the state together and make public awareness of our politics and our civic, you know, events that are happening.
Yeah, because it's really important. And I think part of my frustration with all of it is it's one thing to complain about problems, but it's like if if you're not engaged and you don't know what's going on and you're not properly voting, it's like, well, what right do you really have to complain when you had every opportunity to be a part of the process? I one thing that happened around here in Cumberland County, the first year that I started covering local politics, it was the year Roe v. Wade got overturned. Now, I don't necessarily want to have the debate about whether it should have been overturned or whether you're pro life or pro choice, but the scenario that presented itself that year was okay, Senator Testa is up for reelection, and there's this other guy named Charles LaSpada running. And this guy, Charles LaSpada, basically ghosted the campaign as per the Atlantic City Press. But at the end of the year, he wound up getting 40% of the vote. And it's like you got all these people who are super polarized and energized about that topic, but nobody knows who is going to have their hands on that kind of legislation. They don't know whether this guy is technically pro choice or pro life, or whether he's somewhere in the middle or anything. So, in my mind, another reason why I do this sort of thing is we got to get people at least half involved. It's a really tough sell for me to see 40% of the vote go to somebody who just nobody knows anything about.
It's yeah, it's mind numbing, really, because you know, even with me in this race for governor, there were no candidates really in half the counties standing up to want to run for this job. So, and if you look further south in Virginia, there's really no primaries. There's only one candidate in each party.
Wow.
So we got a lot of work to do to make this a cool thing again. And you touched on it earlier. It's going to happen in the middle schools and the high schools. We got to make this important to them because, we dropped the ball with, with the current baby boomers and Gen X's. There's nobody wants to go and vote. It's not really celebrated like it should be, and it's our freedom.
Yeah, we have every right to participate in the process. And hopefully, with people like you getting involved and pushing for your agendas, and people like me just trying to help get the information out to people in a way where they don't have to literally turn it into a full-time job, maybe that process will get facilitated a little bit better.
Yeah, I know you've touched on it. It's a bright light having new blood in the races, and not career politicians, because we have the voice of the people. We are the people. That's what needs to make up our government once again,
Yep,
is the people.
I agree. So then it looked like one other issue that I saw brought up in a prior video was public health as it went to um the vaccine mandates and COVID lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. Do you want to touch on how you feel about all that?
Yeah, I'm a Maha guy.
Mhm.
I didn't take any of the COVID shots. Uh, I'm not really interested in vaccines. Really not. I don't not for pushing children into schools that are requiring vaccines. That's not going to be part of my administration. It's parents and children can have the option to get vaccinated, but we're not going to force anybody to do anything that can jeopardize their health. You know, this this whole COVID thing opened my eyes to it, and I saw the rush to get a vaccine in place that did little or actually killed a lot of people. So, um, I'm not going to push vaccines, and I'm not going to push lockdowns. It's one thing if people are falling dead in the streets, but for what happened with COVID, after a couple days, we needed to return to our normal way of life, and that'll be protected under my administration.
Yeah, not to impose too much of my own opinion, but as we were talking, just chit chatting right before we started this recording, I was on the other side of the world, just living my own life, and the craziness with the policies, whether you're for taking extra steps towards public safety or you're more of a freedom type guy like you, the messaging and the policies were just very confusing. And so, for the very least, it would seem that a push back towards a balanced, basic libertarian type style would not be the most crazy thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It'd be nice to see policies in place with the new administration to protect the people from future planned pandemics.
Yeah, or at least government overreach. Um, Another thing that I saw come up, uh, which is, I guess, policy 5756, I'm sure you're aware of. And for people at home who are not, basically, there is a school policy in place for how to handle transgender kids in school. And generally speaking, I'm a very live and let live type person. But what I've noticed by looking into issues like this is sometimes the policies themselves are just not written very well, um, to where the terms within the policy were not made very clear. Like, well, what is a transition process? What exactly are the teachers allowed and not allowed to do? All this kind of stuff. So then, in my mind, I actually suggested at a school board meeting, why don't you guys just rewrite the policy to make it clear And the school board solicitor basically told me, well, I could try to rewrite it, but it would basically wind up being the same thing because that's what the state wants. So when it comes to this broad topic, I guess, what is your basic stance? How would you want a policy like that? What direction would you like it to go in? And then, secondly, how do you feel about making sure that the very job that we elect these people to do, which is to clearly write the policy in a way that makes sense and is easily interpreted, how important is that for you?
I want to stand. So you asked a lot of questions there, and it's very important because education is our future. I any of the parents that want to raise their children at home, I want to make sure that they have all the tools they need. Just like in the classroom, the teachers need all the tools they can get. There's no reason they need to come out of their own pocket to pay for stationery for the students. That's absurd, especially at the price that the taxpayer is paying for students in New Jersey. Want to make sure the money follows the student. And there's a legislation in place right now called PBIS. Are you familiar with that?
No, I don't know that one.
Positive behavioral. It's a process where when the student acts out, the teacher is prevented from reprimanding said student.
Hmm.
Um, you know, one implement I would like to go back to with the basics is if we have students that are acting out, they're doing it for a reason, and they need to be made to do things that are, not exciting for them, like painting line stripes in the asphalt out in the parking lot,
Like an actual
or doing and make them do laborious things that they're not going to like doing to get them to conform to positive behavior. So, we've taken a lot of power away from the teacher with that, and I do not stand with PBIS. If with the As far as the transgender student, if there's a student cross-dressing in the school, it's not necessary for the other kids to identify that student how they'd like to be identified because that essentially is a lie. To make other people believe in a lie is offensive to the populace. So, gender affirmation is, it's got to lie with the truth. You, you can't ask people to lie for you, or to believe in a lie that you've created. And that's got to start with the school because if we don't teach the kids what's right, it's a chain reaction that goes through society, and the fundamentals and the morals of the civilization, like here in New Jersey, start to erode. Everything matters.
Yeah, so you're basically saying going back to a more traditional view of biological sex and not forcing anyone to conform to some of these newer ideas. And then just to push forward or circle back to the idea of clearly written legislation, because this is a good example, this policy 5756, but I've seen several others, and it's just wild to me that we elect these people to write these policies, and they're just, I mean, they're written in ways that can get interpreted six different ways. um and then, the general public, half the time they don't read these policies or these statutes and laws. And then when you finally get through to somebody and you say, look at this, like, read the law for yourself, they're really taken aback. I had no idea this law was written this way. So, how would you feel about some sort of push of like the legislation has to actually make sense?
This kind of falls back into line with the state supplied app so we can hold lawmakers accountable. You
Mm,
know, I mentioned it the other day, like a Portnoy review of each legislator or
mm,
each senator or
yeah.
each clerk. We need to have reviews of these people by the public.
Mm.
So now we can hold them accountable. And, having a review system is a good way to manage somebody's progress.
Yeah, I agree. Something a little bit more direct with the public involved as like a basic oversight function. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And roll it into accountability of the money. Some of these schools want to spend money because it's available, but it doesn't make sense. We need to focus our money on what builds the state, infrastructurally, whether it be through energy or um, combining services and schools and utilities. We have over 560 uh, different municipalities, and do we really need that many? If
Right.
we could combine some and save on all that equipment, we're going to save in the big picture. I mean, do we need that many? Can we be 100 less? We'd probably be good. We have our state is not the biggest state, so um, having all these little towns is just making things a lot more expensive.
Right. I hear that. Definitely going in the direction of more efficiency. I agree with that. Um, so then before I move on to like a more or the next general area of the interview, is there any more agenda items or well-known issues you want to touch on before we proceed?
I want to have our gun rights back in New Jersey. We're being blatantly abused here with taxes and guns. Uh, and it makes sense why they wouldn't want us to have guns, so they can get away with all these high taxes. But yeah, I want to bring the gun shows back to New Jersey. Stand your ground needs to be in place. Unlimited mags. These are all things that allow people to protect themselves, and the world's not getting any nicer. So if we need to defend ourselves against the illegal immigrant, let's make sure people have the tools that they need.
Mhm.
I'll also attack the insurance companies here in New Jersey because they've benefited off the backs of New Jersey residents for way too long. I want to make sure our insurance prices on auto and homeowners is the lowest in the nation because we have the highest population. So the insurance companies get the biggest bang for their buck selling insurance policies here in New Jersey. We want to make sure that those rates are the lowest. And, let's also go after the healthcare system. Um, you know, we're paying way too much when we're forced to go to the hospital, and that's 80% or 90% of the bankruptcies in the nation are caused by that. So let's get a firm control of the legislation in regards to hospital stays, and back up Donald Trump with his initiative to get us the lowest prices on medications. We need to have the best prices possible because we are New Jersey.
So what do you mean by because we're New Jersey, we should have the lowest prices possible?
Because the population here in New Jersey is the highest in the world,
Oh, right. So it should
essentially per mile.
be able to
So
spread the costs
yeah,
evenly and
right.
should make.
Yeah, I mean the economic model uh, is completely skewed and in the wrong direction for the insurance companies to benefit off of it. So we need to write the legislation so it actually benefits the population that we have. Because they can sell a lot more here in New Jersey than they can anywhere else.
Gotcha.
We're all forced to get insurance. So, let's make sure we're getting the best price. And we need to fight for those prices. And, if you want to talk about how we gain some money back in the state, everybody wants to live here in New Jersey. So there should be a tax to move into the state. You
Hmm.
know,
As opposed to the
we
tax.
got residents. Right. It's completely backwards.
Gotcha.
Everybody wants to come here. So let's charge them to get here. And if we lose some people, well, it just helps our infrastructure out if we lose some population. Because this heavy population is just tearing these roads up and these sidewalks, everything's getting beaten up because of it.
Understood. Cool. So then the next general area is you're running for governor, which means you're covering the whole entire state. However, my website is focused on Cumberland County. So you're going to be on the ballot, uh, which means I need to cover you. But I would like to have a couple of issues addressed and other ideas talked about specifically geared towards Cumberland County. So I'm going to tee this one up for you real easy because I already know the answer and I think you know the answer. But what outreach have you done here in Cumberland County? Because it's been very obvious to me that not all of the gubernatorial candidates have done outreach around here.
So yeah, I enjoyed the breakfast a couple weeks ago where I met you and one of the senators. It was I was very proud of Cumberland County. I do like Cumberland County a lot. I We have houses down there. The family has houses in Cumberland County, and I like Woodstown area, and you know, beautiful lands that need to be really celebrated with good agriculture. We need the Garden State really to be green again. We need to have our own produce. We need to have healthy alternatives to some of the foods that are being presented to our children in school. It's not healthy. We have a major problem with chronic disease. So outreach in Cumberland County has been good. It's We've been to some of the pubs. Um, I'd like to have gotten to more of the GOP meetings, but we have gotten to some of them. It's been an outsider. It's been a difficult race for an outsider. And I believe that's going to be exposed by people seeing my name on the ballot this year and saying, why wasn't he covered like the rest of the candidates? And, you know, everything's in God's hands. God has total control of this race. So I put my faith in him, and I know what we're doing is impacting New Jersey for a positive. And I'm excited for the election that's not too far away.
Yeah. So then, just to clarify for anybody who might not have picked up what you threw down there, the Cumberland County Regular Republican Organization here uh, has a bi-weekly breakfast. Most of the time, it's at Eastland Golf Course, and sometimes it's over at the Morristown Fire Hall. But basically, it's an opportunity for people in the public once every 2 weeks to show up, hear basic campaign messaging, and meet their local Republican politicians. So uh, that was one of the first things that Mayor Finucci introduced me to. And, as somebody new to local politics, it's a really great opportunity to get started. And as I was teeing up this topic for you, you're one of two Republican governor or gubernatorial candidates that I've seen attend those meetings. And it really does speak a lot that you're more than just a face on the TV or a name on the ballot or whatever. You actually showed up and shook my hand and talked to me for a couple minutes, and it makes the whole process a little bit more humanized as opposed to just, I don't know, a couple of dudes in suits debating things. And who knows if they're even aware Cumberland County exists or not.
Right. Yeah. It's needed. That's the old-fashioned way to do it, and I'm actually looking forward to coming down and seeing you guys again.
Cool. Yeah. I appreciate you being part of the process. So then, to piggyback off of that a little bit, I want to get your take on a couple of issues that are going on in Cumberland County. And the reason I ask you is, again, I want to know when I go cast my vote for a governor that they're actually going to reach out and try to help get some of the things done around here that we need. So, with that in mind, I'll explain first this Nabb extension issue um, for anybody in the audience who isn't already aware. Basically, we have an industrial area in Cumberland County that goes from like the Millville Airport all the way out to like Commercial Township and Down Township and all that. Now, in order for that area to flourish, we need to make it easier for trucks coming off of Route 55 South to reach those destinations. And one way to do that would be to have this road, Nabb Ave, which goes from the western Vineland area going out towards Bridgeton, but then it cuts off towards Millville. And it goes through some farmland already, but the idea would be to extend it through another piece of farmland so those trucks can go straight to those industrial areas. Now, the issue from my perspective is this extension of that road has been talked about for decades. And just last year, we did a planning board type meeting where they laid out all the plans and said how much it was going to cost and all this kind of stuff. But I haven't really heard much about it in a year up until about yesterday when I asked, or 2 days ago, when I asked Commissioner Albrecht on his radio show. So then, what's your general take on a long-standing issue like that, and what could you do as a governor to help facilitate that process and actually get it done?
This is a good question for me to answer. So I'm enjoying that question that you so eloquently stated. So I've been a contractor, a road contractor for some time now. I would immediately remove any red tape on projects like that one, like our nuclear four sites that are proposed but um not begun. I would, I want to make sure the state moves forward into the future. So a roadway that it's required by heavy commercial transportation to move our infrastructure seems to be something we need to do immediately. And not only would I do that immediately, I would seek to do it in a manner to use a new technology, which would be recycled asphalt 100% and some piezoelectricity. So maybe we could generate some power down there and see how test out our new systems that I'd like to put in place for building. 100% recycled asphalt is something used in Europe. It lasts 5 times longer than the roads we're putting down here with only 10% asphalt. It makes the asphalt stronger by recycling it. They add more binders to it, and it's less prone for potholes.
Cool. So it sounds like you have some ideas, especially since you work directly in the field to an extent. And then moving on to another one, we've got this middle mile broadband grant situation, I guess you could call it. So when I first started covering local politics here in Cumberland County, one of the big to do issues was this middle mile broadband thing. So we had lots of meetings and people coming in from Washington, D.C. to give their opinions about whether or not we should do it. And we had companies advertising on Instagram and Facebook saying, say no to the middle mile broadband, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting involved. I'm going to go to these meetings. And the basic idea is they want to lay dark fiber, which is the basic cable for carrying broadband internet, in a ring around the entire county, which would then let service providers, municipalities, individual service providers, meaning like not the big companies like Comcast, but some of the smaller companies, it would give them an opportunity to connect from that ring around the county to the end user. And a big part of why this is such an attractive idea is we have a lot of rural um, area. And so a lot of those places do not have good access to the internet. And it was an exacerbated problem when COVID happened and the students needed to study from home. Uh, but if you don't have good broadband, then you can't really study from home. And apparently, a lot of people were in like McDonald's parking lots trying to like study for school. And so, again, this is another one of those issues that was a big deal a year or two ago, but I've only heard maybe a couple of announcements over the past couple of years to give any sort of significant update on it. So, what would your take be on maybe getting your hands dirty with an issue like that?
I like the technology, whatever the best technology is, whether it be these, this type of is it some type of internet cable buried in the ground,
Yeah.
whether it be that or if there's another better option to get connectivity to the masses down there. It needs to happen. Obviously, it's an infrastructure issue. We need to be able to move forward into the 21st century with connectivity. So that would also be, I want to use whatever technology is the best, whether that be the one or be another one. We'll be able to look through the other counties on what's the best technology and run with that to
Mhm.
get you guys up to speed. That would be right off the top of my head. That would be an immediate infrastructure improvement.
Right. So, I guess then just to clarify, you would try to put issues like that at the top of your docket to ensure that they actually get followed through on.
Those are the ideas I like. I like whatever we could do to move New Jersey forward. I want them at the top, along with where our rights are being taken from us. They're
Mhm.
at the top as well.
Cool. And then this next one is going to be a little bit out of left field. We hadn't talked about it prior, but it sounds like you would probably do the same type of thing. We have a lighthouse down here called East Point Lighthouse, which is a popular spot for a lot of locals to go. It's like a beachy type area where you can walk around. It's a nice date idea type thing. But over the past couple of years, uh, we've lost funding to keep it maintained, and I believe right now it's shut down. And the local politicians are working on it, but it just sounds like another one of these red tape things where we got to talk to this person and we got to talk to that person. And the other aspect to it is it seems a little weird and unfair because there are a lot of other lighthouses, to my understanding, that do get the type of funding that we are asking for. But for whatever reason, when it comes to East Point Lighthouse down here in Cumberland County, we don't get the funding, or the process gets made way more difficult than one might think. So, do you have any ideas of how you might be able to get in there and help streamline that process?
They have a lot of ideas on that. So our covered bridges and our lighthouses are our need to here in Jersey move. Uh, came from where we came from. So I would put together an initiative with non-violent crime uh, inmates, and I would have a chain gang begin where we would restore a lot of key points in the state using people that would like to get outside of those four walls that they look at every day, and give them a trade, teach them something while they're restoring our great state.
Oh, it's a clever idea that I had not thought of before. So that's interesting. And so let's move on to the last little block of ideas that I have. Now, we kind of already touched on this when we were talking about the civics education being reintroduced into schools. So, to reintroduce the general idea, is this is a group of ideas that I've come up with over the years to help get voting information out to the constituents so that they're casting more meaningful votes. My second idea with this group is to have the counties themselves provide the type of service that I'm trying to do. In other words, you went around and collected your signatures, right? And you handed it in to some kind of clerk. Well, why not at that point? Couldn't the clerk just hand you a packet of questions that help you outline your campaign, your issues, your agenda, your background, all that kind of stuff? And then they can themselves put it on some type of neutral website so that people like me don't have to spend 2 years hunting down all the information. um, and then furthermore, they could also do podcast style interviews like this in a neutral format. Like they're not promoting necessarily the GOP and they're not necessarily promoting the Democrats, but they're just giving interviews to help clarify what your positions are. And then thirdly, they could provide meet and greets in town halls and candidate forums so that all the information gets funneled into the county government and it all gets put on a website for everybody to see. How would you feel about something like that?
Oh, I like it. I like to roll that right into that app I was talking about. So anybody that registered or filed a petition, they go right into the app. So you could see, their biographicals right there. Maybe even have some interviews made available by some real state-funded media outlets, not like WHYY. We need to get people that in front of the voters immediately, and we need to use it with the state funds. We can't rely on the establishment media outlets anymore. We need to create something new, something cutting edge, maybe with the phone app, linked with web pages or schedule of events, all that to make it easier for people to stand up and run for their government. We need to protect this great state, and we need to do it with everyday people.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So then the third idea is to help rebuild the local press. In other words, just kind of like you were saying, the national or establishment media can't consistently be trusted. And other places, like my local newspaper was the Vineland Daily Journal, that used to be a really good outlet that would do exactly the kind of thing that I'm doing. Maybe not using as modern technology as I'm doing, but basically through the newspaper was doing a good job of it. But that shut down, or the building is abandoned, and then technically it got absorbed by some type of parent company. But most people around here generally agree it's not doing nearly as good a job as it used to. And then furthermore, we don't have many local reporters. It's my understanding that there used to be a guy named Joseph Smith who used to cover a lot of the local stuff, but I guess during COVID, he moved on to somewhere else after the paper shut down, and so he was one of the last guys to cover stuff. Now, I guess there people are trying to get him to come back and cover some things, but it seems sparse. So my idea would be to recruit somehow at least a handful of people in each county that you can count on and trust to cover things neutrally, not just so that there is general reporting, but there's also this idea that the candidates are going to promote themselves on social media and it's up to like individuals to follow up on things, but we need professionals to follow up and ask critical thinking style questions to candidates so that we're not inherently letting any sort of like bias run through. Like, I'm not trying to say that candidates are always biased and they're trying to like spin things in their direction, but there's always going to be that potential perception like, oh, a Republican guy said this. Of course he would say that because blah, blah, blah. Or a Democrat person said this. So of course they would say that. Blah, blah, blah. So rebuilding that press would give the opportunity that some type of third party outlet is doing that basic oversight function. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a great idea, and I think that, you know, we give the funding to the state colleges. Well, they have a communication department. They should be required to, to cover all these events, and do it in a fair and unbiased manner. This way, they're performing a service right back to the people that, are giving those taxes to those universities.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we're already paying people to be set up to do this very thing. Why don't we just utilize it?
Yeah,
Cool.
we need to add to the structure we have to benefit the people that pay the most.
Mm-hmm. Uh, so then I guess to close out, and I think this question was written down somewhere, but I forgot to ask it, but it actually functions well as a closing question. We mentioned before that there are 11 candidates for governor right now. There's only five in the Republican primary, but 11 overall if you consider both parties. What makes you fundamentally different? Like if you had to give someone one takeaway, why are we going to vote for Justin Barbera as opposed to the 10 other people? What would you say to those type of curious voters?
Well, I would say that an option for the voters of New Jersey to put a governor in place that is not corrupted by money. I'm running a campaign for the people, um, without taking any money or losing any credibility, or um, I'm not beholden to anybody but you, the people. I'm willing to do everything that's needed to be done so we are operating efficiently here in New Jersey.
Yep.
Enough's enough.
Yeah, that's the general vibe I've been getting from covering you or researching you for the past several weeks and throughout the course of this interview. So it seems a very consistent message. So again, everybody at home, my name's Steve Solof. This is informthevoteny.com. We've just had a conversation with Justin Barbera, who is running for the NJ Republican primary gubernatorial choice. So if you want to find out more about him, I've got stuff on informthevoteny.com. He's got a YouTube channel with a bunch of prior interviews. And where else can people find more about you?
You guys can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. TikTok, I'm under the Independent Patriot, and Twitter, TIP1776.
Mhm.
I post to all those sites. Um, I'm seeking your vote. Hopefully, I'm the choice come November, and New Jersey has a bright future.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again for sitting down and having the conversation. Hopefully, I'll see you in a couple weeks at a breakfast.
Thanks, Steve. You're the best.
Later.